As every Criterion Collection fan knows, a couple of times a year, Barnes & Noble has a half-off sale. And I know a lot of people wait until these sales and then they go stock up. So I went pretty hard on this sale on day one. And I'll probably go back again before... Well, I know I'll go back because I got to get that Randolph Scott Renown 4K box set. The Randolph Scott, Bud Bedecker, Harry Joe Brown 4K. That'll be my fifth. I think it's my fifth version of those movies. But I got to have it. It's not out yet. But this is what I picked up on day one. I got 8 titles, and let's just dive into it. So I picked up Dazed and Confused on 4K. I love this. I love this movie. I'm the tail end of Generation X. My high school experience. I was in high school when this movie came out, and it feels like my high school experience, even though it's looking back at the 70s. It's remarkable how little changed between the 70s and the 90s. Now high school is a completely different thing. It's like I see it from my own daughter, but like I also see it like in 21 Jump Street, because I'm like, oh, that's way different than my experience. And one of the reasons I wanted to get, because I've got the Blu-ray, right? The reason I wanted to upgrade to this 4K, more than just the obvious video upgrade, is the special features here. So we've got the documentary. It's like an hour-long documentary called Making Dazed. And it was made, I think it was released in 2005. They captured the 10-year anniversary reunion. By the way, 30 years. This movie's 30 years old this year. They captured the reunions and everything, but what's interesting is like in those 10 years, Ben Affleck had become a huge star. I think he'd gone on to Good Will Hunting. McConaughey had become a huge household name, but other people from the movie had not. And it captures like a really honest look at like Linklater is kind of bitter about some of the stuff that happened. We get like the producer was punching a pole. He was so angry at Linklater, he was punching a metal pole. There's a lot of stuff here, and the story has been further told all these years later in that book. Is it called All Right, All Right, All Right? The Oral History of Dazed and Confused. There's a lot of bitterness around this movie. Even in this documentary, Adam Goldberg, not the creator of the Goldbergs, but the actor Adam Goldberg, says now this was 10 years later. He's like, it's probably what does he say? It's the worst experience he's had on a movie, I think is how he phrases it. Interesting, man. It's interesting stuff. I picked up Target's Boris Karloff. I love this movie. I first bought this movie on DVD at a Kmart. So it was probably some 20 years ago. I found Target's on a Kmart. I don't even think I knew who Peter Bogdanovich was, just the director and producer. I was like, is this the guy with the neckerchief or the ascot? What did he do? Learning more about cinema of the 70s and just that whole new Hollywood scene. Of course, that's an attraction for me now, is learning more about Bogdanovich and his involvement with Targets. And the features here really, they really deliver. So I'll just hold that up. I'm not going to read everything to you, but I mean, it's Karloff. It's great. It's a meeting of old Hollywood and new Hollywood, essentially. This has been on my list for a long time. I've got dozens of discs on my Criterion Collection wish list. Maybe I'll just show you. Here's my wish list. These are the ones that are like high priorities for me. So Cat People is one that I've wanted for a long time because it has a feature-length documentary about Val Lewton. Val Lewton, The Man in the Shadows, a 2008 feature-length documentary. It's also got the commentary with Gregory Mank. It's really bells and whistles. That's why we love Criterion. It's for the bells and whistles. I Want to Hold Your Hand. This is it's like American Graffiti for the 70s. It was 1978. And it's about a group of teenagers who are trying to get to the Ed Sullivan Theater to see the Beatles play on Ed Sullivan. That's what it's about. It's about Beatlemania at the height of Beatlemania on the Ed Sullivan Show. And it's shot like it's all one night. And I love it. It's wall-to-wall Beatles music, and I'm a huge Beatles fan, so this is kind of like a piece of my Beatles collection. But the real interesting thing here is it's like a 45-minute interview with the director, Robert Zemeckis, Bob Gale, and Steven Spielberg, who produced this. I think this was the first film, Zemeckis' first feature film, I believe. And it was Spielberg's first movie producing for something he wasn't directing himself. So producing somebody else. And so they're all sitting there. I think it's 2018 that they recorded this. And they're throwing dirt about like what went down, talking about executives, talking about how the studio, which was Universal, by the way, did not get behind them on the movie. They didn't promote it properly. They just kind of let it die. And it's real. I mean, it's visceral. My favorite revelation from this is Zemeckis is like, I made this outside of the Directors Guild, and Spielberg's like, what? And he goes, well, yeah, I called up and I said, hey, I want to be a member of the Directors Guild, and the lady said, that's not how it works, and she hung up on me. So I was like, all right, and I made my next 3 movies outside of the Directors Guild, and Spielberg is like he's visibly, he's like, what? You weren't in the Directors Guild when you made, and he starts naming the movies. He's like, that's right. And he's like, you better be glad there's not that the statute of limitations is expired on this, because Spielberg is a rules guy. He's the guy that says that you shouldn't be eligible for an Academy Award if your movie didn't play on a big screen, like at a cinema. He doesn't think streaming should be eligible for Academy Awards. He's a rules guy. He's very old Hollywood. And listen, I'm an old Hollywood kind of guy too. Like I support that. But it's just really funny because it's happening right there on camera in front of us. And because Spielberg doesn't do commentaries, he doesn't really talk a lot about his movies. When you see Spielberg, it's usually very produced. It's like candid Spielberg. And I don't know. I love it. I thought it was great. Oh, by the way, it's got Robert Zemeckis' 2 student films from USC are on here as well. The first one is like a guy in an elevator, black and white. You can tell it was really cheaply done. The second one's more ambitious. That's the one that they took to Steven Spielberg to say, will you produce our movie? It's great to have those. Gilda, one of the quintessential film noir. Probably a top 5, definitely a top 10 film noir. Rita Hayworth has never been more beautiful, and she was very beautiful in many movies. But I think this is she's stunning in this film. And Eddie Muller's involved with this. He's got a new interview with Eddie Muller. I haven't watched the special features on this yet, but it's got an interview piece from 2010 featuring filmmaker Martin Scorsese and Baz Luhrmann. That's interesting to be talking about Gilda, because those 2 guys, I feel like they're very different. They make very different kinds of movies, but maybe they're more alike than I like to think, because both of them seem to be, I don't know. There's like a passion and like a hyperactivity. I don't know if Scorsese's hyperactivity ends up on screen. I think it's mostly behind the screen. But hey, there's stories out there about Scorsese on set, and I wonder if the same is true for Luhrmann. So I'm interested to watch that special feature, is my point. Red River, Howard Hawks' classic Western. This is one of those. When people talk about John Wayne, there's a few that are on the short list for best John Wayne movie. This is usually on that list. I've been holding off on this because it's an MGM United Artists film, and let's be honest, Kino Lorber is doing a lot of MGM movies that Criterion has released on Blu-ray. Kino Lorber's putting them out on 4K, and so as soon as Kino Lorber started to do that, I was like, well, I better slow down on the MGM because they might be getting 4Ks soon, and it hasn't happened yet. But because I bought this, it will be announced soon, I'm sure. Like, probably that news is coming tomorrow because I bought this. Because that's how it works, right? But it's got a lot of great... well, here, this is an argument for why, like, maybe not, because this is a 2K digital restoration. So maybe that makes me feel a little bit better. I'm like, well, it's not a 4K restoration. That always sucks when you buy a movie and it's a 4K restoration. You're like, why no 4K? By the way, check out my video, why no 4K? Because we talk about why no 4K. I picked up Thief. And again, against my better judgment, it's MGM, it's United Artists. I know Frank Tarzi from Kino Lorber really likes Thief, and I know that he would probably, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But it feels like a shoe-in for a Criterion 4K. I'm sorry, a Kino Lorber 4K. I'd love a Criterion 4K. I'd love any 4K for this in any way possible, right? It's James Caan, one of his more visceral, memorable performances, and... it's Michael Mann, 1980s Michael Mann, before Miami Vice. I mean, this is like, look, Heat's great. I love Heat. I love the Pacino, De Niro dance of that movie. But Michael Mann in the 80s, there's something about that to me. Like, this is like OG Michael Mann. Anyway, Thief is one I've been wanting to add to my collection for a while. New digital restoration from a 4K film transfer. Oh no, what have I done? Last but not least, Being John Malkovich. I adore this movie. I saw this in theaters in 1990. Was it 98? 1999. It blew my fragile little mind. The chances that studios used to take on movies, and they could do that because they were not spending hundreds of millions of dollars on them, they were risky, and they often paid off with something like this. I don't think this had mass appeal, but it did have a huge cult following and critical following as well. And I think that's something that the studios have forgotten about, is that good movies, while they may not make a huge dent in the box office at the time, their legacy lives on long beyond that box office experience. I mean, look, guys, it's written by Charlie Kaufman. It's directed by Spike Jonze. John Cusack, Cameron Diaz, one of the most beautiful women in the world, in a decidedly unbeautiful presentation. Like, her appearance in this movie is unique. It's just risky, and I really appreciate that. And of course, John Malkovich being willing to do this in the first place. That's good stuff. So this is just my day one haul. I would like to go get some more stuff. I'm trying to hone in on my Linklater collection and build that up. Well, I showed you the list probably, right? So that's what it'll probably come from that list. Guys, what did you pick up during the Criterion sale? Let's talk about it and celebrate movies. You know, it's not just about buying them and getting good deals. It's about talking about what we love. I always want my videos to be a jumping off point for conversation about movies. Not about collecting, about watching movies. I buy these to watch them. These are fantastic movies, and I want to talk to them. That's why this video is not just like, hey, I just went to Barnes & Noble and I picked these up. Catch you later. Like, I'm telling you why I connect with these movies, because it's really important to me. I love movies, and I know you do too, so let's talk about them. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you. Take care. Until next time, I will catch you later.